So this week, we are wrapping up, is it in the Bible true or false? And instead of just reviewing one statement, one true or false statement, I've got 6. So I'm really going to push you today. And then the 7th one, we're going to spend some time on and dig a little deeper. So you ready for the first question? Or it's not a question, it's a statement. Number 1, is it true or false? And you can shout it out if you want, if you're pretty confident. If you'd rather just be quiet or follow your Sunday school teacher, I don't know. I don't know how she feels about that. But the first one is to escape by the skin of your teeth. Have you ever heard that? Have you said it? Like when things are really, really close. Man, I got through that by the skin of my teeth. Is that in the Bible true or false? Okay. It's true. Job 19:20. My bone clings to my skin and to my flesh, and I have escaped by the skin of my teeth. How about that? The second one, go the extra mile. Has anybody ever gone the extra mile? Yeah. True or false? Is go the extra mile in the Bible? I've got some. Yeah, we're just not sure. It is true. It is true. Jesus said this in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 5:41. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2 miles. The third one, to thine own self be true. True or false? I know you've heard that before. Do you think it's in the Bible, true or false? To that, now you're just quiet, like, I don't know if I know. To thine own self be true is false. Hayden, do you know why it's false? No. You don't. What's that? You are to be true to God and not yourself. That's a very good reasoning that out, but not the answer I was looking for. This quote is from Shakespeare's Hamlet. Yeah? Yeah. To thine own self be true. I've never seen Hamlet, but that's where it comes from. Number 4, cleanliness is next to godliness. False? Got some falses, I got a true. It is false. It is not in the Bible. However, I kind of give it to you either way on this one. There are rules laid out in Leviticus about ceremonial washing, how the priests had to go through the ceremonial washing. But the quote is nowhere to be found in the Word. Number 5, money is the root of all evil. True or false? Should be true. If it's not true, it is. It should be. It is false. Because why? The love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. And you can find that in 1 Timothy 6:10. Money is neutral. It's neither good or bad. It's how you use it and your attitude toward it that makes it a problem. So the love of money is the root of all evil. Very good. You get a star, Tim. Oh, that's why. Number 6, I can see the writing on the wall. Have you ever had something occur and you say, I know that man's going to fire me, or I know this isn't going to go well. I hate to go to the staff meeting because I think it's going to be bad. I can see the writing on the wall. Okay, got some false, got some true. It is true. Does anybody know why? Yes, yes. Back in Daniel chapter 5, verse 5, you had the invisible hand that was writing on King Belshazzar's wall. And they had to go get Daniel so he can interpret what was happening, what the words were. So yes, that is true. Good, good, good. And now the final one that we're going to spend a little bit of time on is number 7, and it is God helps those who help themselves. True or false? I hear both. We got both bases covered. Got a true and we got a false. And this is false. God helps those who help themselves is false. And we're going to dig a little deeper so we understand why this statement is false. In 1996, Barna Research conducted a poll on this statement. They asked Americans if this was a direct quote from the Bible. 82% of those surveyed answered that it was in the Bible. So you're in good company if you answer true. According to an article that I found on Bible Gateway Online, it was written by Jeremy Bouma, dated June 2017. And he indicates that this quote, God helps those who help themselves, can be traced back to 3 sources. And most recently, Benjamin Franklin. Does anybody remember hearing about Poor Richard's Almanac? Yeah? Yeah, some of you who've been here for a little while remember hearing something about that. Well, every year from 1732 to 1758, Poor Richard's Almanac was published, and Benjamin Franklin wrote under the alias of Richard Sanders, who I guess is Poor Richard. And in this publication, of course, to everything else that you would find in an almanac, were little bits of wisdom and wit. And the phrase, God helps those who help themselves, was actually printed in an edition that was printed during 1733. I can't tell you the context to which it was in there because I couldn't find that, but in 1733 it was in there. The second place, which is, of course, before Benjamin Franklin, so maybe he took it from there, but it can be found in Aesop's Fables. Anybody remember learning about Aesop's Fables in grade school? Yeah. So the proverb, God helps those who help themselves, was woven into a tale entitled Hercules and the Wagoner. Sounds cool, doesn't it? Didn't know what a wagoner was until I looked at the illustration. And it's basically just a big wagon with wheels that's pulled by horses or donkey or oxen. And so the wagoner one day was pulling a very, very heavy load, more so than he would on a normal day. And the wheels of his cart became stuck in the mud. And the more the horses pulled, the more the wheels were consumed by the mud. And the wagoner in desperation cried out to Hercules and needed help in his time of distress. And Hercules answered, "Get up and put your shoulder to the wheel." So that's another one that we've heard before, right? Put your shoulder to the wheel. The gods, little gods, help them who help themselves. So that was kind of interesting. And finally, we find the third account of this statement in the book of the Quran. It gave me the location, but I didn't understand it because it was in a different language, so I'm just going to tell you what it said. in quotations here, it says, "Indeed, Allah will not change the conditions of a population until they change what is in themselves." In this passage, the Quran expects a person to help himself by changing his own attitude and behavior before God will come to his aid. The principle is the same as that in Aesop's proverb: those who expect divine help must first get the ball rolling themselves. How do you think that differs from the biblical teaching? Where does God meet us? After we've cleaned ourselves all up and we're looking pretty and we smell good? No, he meets us where we are. He meets us in the sin. Wherever we find ourselves, we don't have to clean ourselves up. God comes to us and he meets us there. So that is definitely one difference that's very important. So now that we know where this saying originated, let's dig a little deeper and find out more about the Bible's teaching on this subject. The Old Testament book of Proverbs teaches that relying on ourselves rather than on the wisdom of God is foolhardy. Proverbs 28:26 says this: "Those who trust in themselves are fools, but those who walk in wisdom are kept safe." Isaiah 25:4 says this: "You have been a refuge for the poor, a refuge for the needy in their distress, a shelter from the storm and a shade from the heat. For the breath of the ruthless is like a storm driving against a wall." God provides tangibly for those who are helpless and needy. God helps those who can't help themselves. Can we get ourselves to heaven? No. The only way we can get to heaven is through Jesus Christ, right? So God sent his only Son so that we can get to heaven because we couldn't get there on our own. But to demonstrate, to show it or illustrate it a little more clearly, I want to go back to 1 Kings chapter 17. And we're going to see here how God provided for Elijah during a severe drought. And you all remember Elijah, he was a prophet of God. And it's really interesting here because Elijah prophesies this drought, and then he becomes a victim of it. So we're going to see how God takes care of this. And I'm going to read 1 Kings 1-7 first. All right? Hear the word of the Lord. Now Elijah, who was from the Tishbe in Galilee, in Gilead. Yeah, I just made that up. Let's start again. Now Elijah, who was from Tishbe in Gilead, told King Ahab, "As surely as the Lord, the God of Israel lives, the God whom I worship and serve, there will be no dew or rain during the next few years unless I give the word." Then the Lord said to Elijah, "Go to the east and hide by Kerith Brook, at the place east of where it enters the Jordan River. Drink from the brook and eat what the ravens bring you, for I have commanded them to bring you food." So Elijah did as the Lord had told him and camped beside Kerith Brook. The ravens brought him bread and meat each morning and evening, and he drank from the brook. But after a while the brook dried up, for there was no rainfall anywhere in the land. So I want to stop there and talk a little bit about what we just read. So God took Elijah out of Israel, out of the famine area, Gilead, and took him to this brook, instructed him where to go, and that he was going to send ravens to feed him how many times a day? Once in the morning and once in the evening. And what were they going to feed him? Bread and meat. Very good. So what do you know about ravens? They're black and they're big. They're what? They are smart. Somebody else said that in the last church. I didn't know that, but they are very smart. And they're scavengers. They eat dead things. You know, like the roadkill on the side of the road. They love it. That's their favorite food. They do eat nuts and stuff and berries, but they really like dead things. So, the meat that they were bringing to Elijah, I'm not saying that it was dead meat. That's not what I'm saying. But the meat that they were bringing to Elijah normally would never have arrived because what? They would have eaten it. God managed to change the nature of these birds to accommodate his prophet during the severe drought and famine that it created. God provided. And he did it because Elijah couldn't provide for himself. So God provided what Elijah needed to sustain him in a very unique way. And then what happened in the last verse that I read in verse 7? The brook dried up. The brook dried up. And it doesn't give us a specific time. It just says after a while. So we don't know exactly how long that was, but the brook did dry up. Now, if God's providing for Elijah, which we just determined he was, he sent him to this place, to this brook to drink, and he sent the ravens to feed him. What is up? What's going on? Well, I believe that it's likely that Elijah had gotten accustomed to the ravens' visits and having the water to drink. He had gotten comfortable with the routine, and he started to depend upon the bird in the brook instead of God who set it in motion. So I have to ask you this morning, are you in a real comfortable place? Have you gotten used to things being the same? Have you? See, I was a little conflicted with this God helps those who help themselves statement, because we just talked last week and even the week before about faith, and to be alive, faith has to be working, right? It has to be active. You have to be living your faith. You have to be loving other people, and that means that you're active. So you're not sitting on the couch eating bonbons, right? But see, here's where we have a little trouble as humans, is we have a really good job, say, and we're providing for our family. I work really hard every day to bring home that money and pay for the things that my family needs. And we get all proud and haughty about it. But who gave you that job? God did. God is providing for you and your family. So we need to just step down, back up, and get a little humble about how God is providing and working through our life. So if we've gotten comfortable and we're used to the standard, maybe we're just taking things for granted, all right? So the brook dries up. God knows that Elijah has gotten comfortable. He's gotten used to the way that he's being fed and watered, so to speak. And so God says, I'm going to fix this. Elijah, we're going to read here, and he's going to send him somewhere else. So now I'm going to read to you verses 8 through 16. I'm going to pick up where we left off as soon as I find it. There it is. Then the Lord said to Elijah, "Go and live in the village of Zarephath, near the city of Sidon. There is a widow there who will feed you. I have given her my instructions." So he went to Zarephath. As he arrived at the gates of the village, he saw a widow gathering sticks, and he asked her, "Would you please bring me a cup of water?" As she was going to get it, he called to her, "Bring me a bite of bread too." But she said, she said, "I swear by the Lord your God that I don't have a single piece of bread in the house, and I have only a handful of flour left in the jar and a little cooking oil in the bottom of a jug. I was just gathering a few sticks to cook this last meal, and then my son and I will die." But Elijah said to her, "Don't be afraid. Go ahead and cook that last meal, but bake me a little loaf of bread first. Afterward, there will still be enough food for you and your son. For this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. There will always be plenty of flour and oil left in your containers until the time when the Lord sends rain and the crops grow again." So she did as Elijah said, and she and Elijah and her son continued to eat from her supply of flour and oil for many days. For no matter how much they used, there was always enough left in the containers, just as the Lord had promised through Elijah. The word of God for the people of God. So now God takes him from the brook and he sends him to this little village, and there he finds an old, helpless, poverty-stricken, non-Jewish widow. So Elijah was humbled that he is going to be taking assistance or accepting assistance from this individual. See, when you were a widow in Jesus' day, you had to rely on someone to provide for you if you couldn't provide for yourself. So somehow she had managed to survive and take care of her son. But God had already gone before and spoken to this widow, and she was part of the plan that God used to provide for Elijah. So, I want to stop there and say, sometimes you are Elijah and you need assistance and being provided for, and sometimes you are the widow and you provide that assistance that is needed to another brother and sister in Christ. But this widow was the last person that he expected God to use. And God can absolutely use anyone. Your worth is not determined by the balance in your bank account. The Lord loves you and he will use you. So instead of being greedy and just keeping the little bit of flour and the little bit of oil that she saw in those containers and fixing her and her son a meal, she was obedient to the Lord's words, and she provided a meal for Elijah and her son, and they ate for many days. Again, it doesn't give us a specific number, but it does say many days. So what we can learn for that is that we need to be humble. More humbleness. Don't allow pride to get in our way. Say, well, I'm not taking help from you because I don't know that you're worthy. We don't get to pick and choose who's worthy. Everybody's worthy in the Lord's sight. And he can choose anyone to assist you at any time. So let's move into the New Testament and talk about Jesus for a minute. During Jesus' ministry, who did he minister to? Louder. Everybody. He ministered to everyone. And where did he concentrate a lot? On the poor, the needy, the sick, the widows, the orphans, the children, and the women. All of those were in a social class that were the bottom rung of the ladder. And he elevated them to positions of worth. He loved on them. He healed them. They mattered to him, and he provided for them. He showed his compassion and mercy. And we need Jesus today just as they needed him back then. But we can't let our pride interfere. We can't think that, oh, I got this. I can handle this on my own. When you start thinking that, you are in dangerous territory. You must seek the Lord's will for your life and his direction. What he wants you to do, then you're going to be successful. Proverbs 3:6 says this, "In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight." And then in Psalm 105:4, it says to seek the Lord and his strength. Seek his face continually, not your own. And we already talked about, faith being in action, and we shouldn't be eating bonbons and watching TV. We should be working, but remembering who provided that job or that opportunity for you to earn money. Ultimately, we must depend upon God and his will. We have to work, but we must never think that because we work and get a paycheck, it is our own doing. It is God, and we must recognize this. So seeking his will for our lives and depending upon him totally will allow us to receive blessings, but also it will allow us to be a blessing to others. Amen. All right, if you'll